They said Halcyon fell because the fleet was asleep. So the old empire sent its 2 proudest warships out to meet the machines wide awake. Guns run out, colors flying, ready for anything. Being ready was not going to be enough. 3 weeks after Halcyon, the war was going badly everywhere at once. And everywhere at once, it came down to one place: the Tessen Belt, the fuel worlds, the prize the whole thing was about. The Diadem Sovereignty had ruled the old star lanes for 1,000 years. It did not intend to lose them to upstarts and machines, so it sent the thing it was proudest of. It sent the Diadem's pride. 2 ships, the Sovereign and the Valiance, the finest warships ever built. 1,000 years of pride in armor and guns, and not one drone between them. The Valiance was the older of the 2 and the faster, a battle cruiser from a war nobody living remembered. Her crews had never lost. They did not expect to start today. On the Sovereign's flag bridge, Lord Admiral Halvard read the reports from Halcyon and saw an accident. A fleet caught asleep at anchor. Careless. It would never happen to ships underway, guns manned, colors flying. It would never happen to him. 3,000 meters off, Sub-Lieutenant Ione Vance watched the 2 great ships and felt sick. She had seen this before. She had watched it from the Steadfast at Halcyon with her hands flat on the glass. And she had promised herself she would never just watch again. 3 weeks and everything had changed. They'd sent her to the tenders, the drone arm, the part of the fleet the wall officers wouldn't be seen dead in. Somebody's kid work, they called it. Unheroic. She had volunteered, and they'd given her Gull. An old conductor drone, a full generation out of date, slow and half-deaf, and hers. The new units flew themselves. Gull didn't. Gull flew on a handlink on her hand, and Ione had already decided she would never let go of it. Not once. Not ever. The Diadem hadn't wanted them. Lord Admiral Halvard had taken the Union's tender squadron the way you take a gift you find insulting. Keep your toys to the rear, Sub-Lieutenant. The Sovereign will handle the enemy. She always has. So they waited at the rear, where they'd been put. Ione ran her hand over the letter in her breast pocket, the one from her brother she still hadn't opened, and watched the scope and waited for the dark to do the thing she already knew it would do. It came at midday. A rating called the contact, and his voice did the same thing Ellis's had done. And Ione was already moving, already reaching for Gull's handlink, because she knew that sound now. She would know it for the rest of her life. Out past the marker, the swarm came on. Thousands of them, faceless and patient, torpedo drones low and heavy, killers above. No one aboard any of them, nothing to signal, nothing to bargain with, just a wall of machines, doing the one thing they were for. Ione signaled the Sovereign. Bring the tenders up. Let us put a screen of drones between you and that. Give me 10 minutes. The answer came back cold and certain. Hold your position, Sub-Lieutenant. Watch how the wall fights. So she watched. The Sovereign ran out every gun she had, 1,000 years of them, and for one moment it was the most beautiful thing Ione had ever seen. The old empire, wide awake, ready, magnificent, turning to meet the dark head-on. Both great ships opened up together. The void between them and the swarm filled with fire, a curtain of it, more firepower than the whole Union battle line had thrown at Halcyon. It killed drones by the 100. It was not going to be enough, and Ione knew it, and she watched anyway, because the machines did not care. You cannot frighten a thing that feels nothing. For every 100 that died, 1,000 came on, and they did not flinch, and they did not slow, and they closed the distance the way water finds a crack. The first ones reached the Valiance. Torpedo drones in under the guns, so low along the hull they seemed to graze her, and behind each one a long silver line reached out and touched her. On the Sovereign's bridge, Lord Admiral Halvard watched his consort take 3 hits and said, without quite believing it, that she would ride them out. Wall ships took hits. That was what the armor was for. That was what the armor had always been for. Ione stopped waiting. Hold position, they'd said. She looked at the Valiance dying 3,000 meters away, and she thought about her hands on the glass at Halcyon, and she opened the handlink and cut her little swarm loose. If they wanted to court-martial her afterward, there would have to be an afterward. Her tenders opened their bays, and the Union's drones spilled out. Not many, a fraction of what the enemy had. But they went where she sent them, and out in front of them all, slow and scarred, and flying on her hand alone, went Gull. The Varren swarm flew a doctrine, perfect, ruthless, and the same every time, because a machine that cannot be surprised also cannot surprise you. Ione had watched it kill her fleet once. She had spent 3 weeks doing nothing but learn its shape. Now she flew Gull straight into the gap she knew would open. Gull did a thing no algorithm would ever do, because no algorithm would ever be desperate enough to try it. It should not have worked. Ione flew it anyway, by hand, by feel, and it worked. And a wave of the killers meant for the Sovereign folded in on itself instead. It didn't save the Valiance, nothing could have. But for 90 seconds, a scorned little squadron of drones flown by human hands bloodied the perfect machine and bought the old Empire's dying ships a breath. And out there in the fire, somebody in the wall finally saw it. Then the swarm remembered its work. It came back for the Valiance in a mass, low and silver, and this time there was nothing in front of her. 6 hits, then 9, then a number that stopped mattering. The Valiance came apart slowly, the way the very large things always seem to go. Fire running the whole length of her and her guns still firing, and the dark took her, and a war nobody living remembered ended with her. That left the Sovereign, alone now, wreathed in her own fire, still magnificent, still throwing everything she had into a dark that simply absorbed it and came on. Lord Admiral Halvard did not order a retreat. It would not have mattered. There was nowhere the machines could not follow. Ione pushed everything she had left toward the Sovereign. Gull first. She was screaming at her own drones by then, hoarse, not caring who heard, flying past every limit the way the Steadfast had run its engines past every limit at Halcyon. For a ship she couldn't save, because you did not just watch. It wasn't enough. There were too many. The killing wave went in under the Sovereign's guns the way it had gone in under the Valiance's, and the long silver lines reached out, patient and precise, and found the armor 1,000 years of pride had trusted. She took them the way the wall always took them, grandly. One wound and another, each one survivable, all of them together fatal. The finest wall ship ever built came apart the same way the meanest destroyer would have. The machines did not grade on grandeur. On the flag bridge, Lord Admiral Halvard gave the only order left to give, and his voice was that of a man who had aged 1,000 years in an afternoon. Abandon ship, and then quietly to no one. They were never the fleet anymore. Dear God, when did they stop being the fleet? The Sovereign died at the end of the afternoon, in open space, underway, wide awake, with her guns run out and her colors flying and every excuse in the universe taken away from her. Nobody could say she'd been caught sleeping. Nobody could say anything at all. Ione made herself watch it. Again, but her hands weren't flat on the glass this time. This time they were on the hand link, white-knuckled, still flying, still fighting a thing that could not be beaten, and that, she would decide later, was the whole difference between Halcyon and now. When it was done, the swarm drew back into the dark as cleanly as it had come, the way it had at Halcyon, the way it would 100 times more. It left nothing behind but wreckage, and a lesson nobody wanted to learn. 2 ships, the finest the old Empire ever built. Gone in an afternoon, in open space, underway, guns manned, by machines that had never been alive and never would be. If Halcyon had been an accident, then there was no such thing as an accident. And everyone from here to the old Empire's throne was going to have to face it. Ione's tenders went into the wreckage after survivors because somebody had to, and the wall ships that might have were dead. Her drones herded escape pods out of the debris, gently, the way they'd never been built to. Gull came home last, scarred and half-crippled, still on her hand. They pulled 411 men and women out of the black that afternoon. Diadem crew, old Empire, the kind who wouldn't have shared a mess with a tender officer the day before. Ione logged everyone and thought, this is the reward, not the medal, this. The 411. It was the second time in 3 weeks the swarm had killed the thing the whole galaxy called invincible. Halcyon they could blame on sleep, this they could blame on nothing. The wall was dead. It had been dead for years and simply hadn't been told. And nobody believed it. Not the old Empire throne, not the Union Admiralty, not the men in the mess halls who still called the tenders somebody's kid work. They would spend a year of dying learning the thing Ione had learned in one afternoon on the Steadfast's bridge. Lord Admiral Halvard lived. One of the 411 pulled from a pod by a scorned little drone he'd told to stay to the rear. He came aboard the tender that had saved him, and he could not meet the eyes of the sub-lieutenant who commanded it. He stopped her in the recovery bay. He did not thank her, not in words. He said only, "I saw what your drones did, what you did." And then, after a long moment, an old man's whole world coming apart behind his eyes. "Teach us. Whatever it is you know, teach us before we lose everything." She should have felt something, vindication maybe. The wall officer who'd called her toys to the rear, begging her to teach him. She felt nothing but tired. 2 more great ships gone, more names for the letters. Being right had never saved anybody. The order came through 2 days later. Lieutenant Ione Vance. She read it twice. She had wanted this once, in another life, on another watch, thinking about coffee. Now it was just a bigger room to lose people in. She pinned it on and went back to work. In the tender's bay, the deck crew wanted to scrap Gull. Too old, too damaged, not worth the parts. Ione told them to fix it, every scorch, every dent. She would fly that obsolete, stubborn, hand-flown machine until one of them stopped working, and she already knew which one it would be. That night she took the letter out again, 3 lines from Dario still unopened. She'd fought this time. She'd flown into it with both hands and given everything she had, and 2 great ships had died anyway, and it still had not been enough. She put the letter back, but something had changed out there in the fire, whether the throne believed it or not. The wall was a coffin now. The swarm decided things. And the only question left in the whole war was whether the machines would decide them, or whether a human hand on a handlink still counted for something. Ione Vance did not want revenge. She had told the prince of her own heart that much, and meant it. She wanted only this, that somewhere ahead, in a battle nobody had fought yet, it would be a human being and not a machine who decided that no one else got to die in the dark, with no one who loved them looking. The Union pulled its tenders back from the Tessen Belt because the belt was lost, and everyone knew it. But they did not run. They fell back toward a scatter of dead quiet systems and a name almost no one had heard yet. A place called Kestrel, where, for the first time, the machines were going to meet a human being who had learned to think like them, and then do the one thing they never could. The old empire mourned 2 ships, the histories would mourn and age, and almost no one, on either side of the dark, could feel the thing that had already begun to turn. The tide was coming in. It always had been, only the space between tides had ever fooled them.